Hi there, and greetings to everyone seeking and hoping to find the true meaning of life, those sick and tired of this poisonous world, whose soul and spirit are bleeding, and of the emptiness and futility of this materialistic civilization. Welcome to our radio show, The Way, the Truth, the Life. Welcome to our world of supreme love and immortality, where all human hopes are fulfilled. Welcome to the world of Orthodox Christian Spirituality, a world now unknown to the West, which once had the key, but lost it a long time ago, the key that has an answer to every question. My name is monk Arseniye Yovanovich. I live in the monastery of Ostrog, Monte Negro. It is never too easy to talk on spiritual issues, especially when it has to be in foreign language, which is English to me. I apologize in advance for possible mistakes. However, I believe God will help me to say the word and you to understand it. So, let us embark on our waves. Hi there, and greetings to all of you all over the planet who happen to listen to our radio station, Svetigora, and to me, little monk from Monte Negro. So since I'm a monk, it's 8 o'clock now. I just came from the church. We had a little longer service. It's always like this, Saturday evenings. We call it vigil, although it's not real vigil through the whole night, as they do, for example, in big serious monasteries, especially on Mount Athos. Very often they have vigil services through the whole night, sometimes more than 12, 14, 15 hours, of course, before the big feast days. Otherwise, usually those services are 5, 6, 7 hours through the night, because the night is a spiritual part of day. Because everything calms down, no more noise. Even the nature, even birds are getting quiet and they are falling asleep. But the night could be used for different purposes. You can spend the night in bed, sleeping, not thinking of good nor evil. Somebody can spend the night in the nightclub, and after the regular nightclub, then in the morning in the after hours club, as they call it, and this way spending whole night dancing, going crazy on drugs and alcohol and similar. Somebody spends night in criminal actions, and some of them, the most seldom, they spend night in prayer, whether privately at their homes or at their monastic cells or in the church during the all-night vigil service. And it determines really what kind of energy do we gather through activities of ours. Every activity is followed by a certain spirit, and those spirits who are emanating from criminal activities or from spending night on drugs in some nightclub, those spirits, we know who they are and what do they have in intention for the humankind. But this most supreme spirit, which is man-loving spirit, which is called Holy Spirit, that emanates from the creator of the universe. And that spirit is that creator, the very creator by himself. That spirit we gather and we acquire this wealth in our souls if we spend our night in prayer, privately or in the church service. So, of course, somebody will say, who cares for church anymore today in this world? From time to time I speak to people who come to us to the monastery from Europe, and what I saw myself and what I heard from them, I realized that the Christianity today is devastated, doesn't exist anymore in Western Europe. They say, or Friedrich Nietzsche have said, that the God is dead. He said, God is dead, we killed him. So really, when you take a look on churches all around Western Europe, especially, and of course Roman Catholic churches, and more than that, Protestant churches, they're slowly but surely becoming theaters, shopping malls, nightclubs, but there is no prayer in them. Or they're just becoming museums. When you go there, you pay a ticket and you go inside and look around, take photos, and you admire, but it's dead. Since there is no prayer, there is nothing in there. So whoever are going to listen to this, maybe they will turn off the radio, or they will go to the other website, being bored with this talk about church and God and all these things. But it's up to your freedom, it's up to your free will to decide whether maybe there is something in it, maybe there is some hidden meaning that we have lost during the time. So this is my aim, this is my goal, because years ago, decades ago, I was thinking the same way, but life taught me differently. Life taught me that the Lord, the creator of the universe, does exist, and it is very important, it is essential, if he really does exist, no matter which church says what, no matter what philosophers and thinkers say about it, if the creator exists, then it is essential to get in touch with him, and this is the most important thing in our lives. But unfortunately, this civilization went other way, different way, wrong way, and maybe you will say you're not right, but this what happens today shows that it is really right, that the civilization went wrong. Today you can read contemporary modern thinkers, okay, let's call them philosophers, but philosophy is something much more deeper and sublime. But okay, modern philosophers, and many of them are very sensitive and clever and extremely well-educated people, and of course extremely intelligent, and they are seekers in a way, they are questers. They search for truth, and they realize, they see that the situation in the world is very bad. It is basically hopeless, and they point to all those wrong things, and they see that the world is going really into the disaster, and they explain everything in minutes, in detail, and they are coming always to the point of despair and hopelessness. They see everything, but they don't see the exit. They don't see and they don't give the answer. So reading these books is really extremely burdensome, and it's really, what can I say, makes you really sick. It doesn't really give you any real meaning and real hope that there is a salvation and that there is a truth in the world. And of course they always say God is dead. There is no God. God and religion is one great illusion. And Sigmund Freud said that the religion is a collective neurosis, and the The communists used to say that the religion is the opium for masses, for people. But fortunately or unfortunately for them, God, the Creator, really exists. And this vast, beautiful universe is showing this to us. And of course there is a very concrete, very beautiful way to realize this deep in your heart. Not only watching the beautiful flower or the flight of a bird in the blue sky. This many philosophies and religions all around the world are talking about. But I never found nowhere, in no other religion except this original Christianity, which is called Orthodoxy, that you can get and you can come in a full contact, in full communion with the Creator. But about this we'll talk later. Now, before we take off by the Boeing 707 towards America, we'll stay a little bit more in Europe. So, from my childhood, as I mentioned in the first show, I was looking for inner, deeper meaning of life. And being always disturbed by many things from outer life, from the very childhood, some kind of disturbance starting to grow into myself. And I was looking always, all my life, all my young life, I was looking for inner peace, for serenity, for joy, for happiness. And it was always so slippery. And whenever I would catch some of it, it would slip off very easy and very fast. And I was realizing that maybe it's a delusion. Maybe it doesn't really exist. Maybe this is all hopeless. Maybe we are just a mistake of the universe. Maybe humankind is a mistake of nature. But I was not giving up, and I was searching. And as I mentioned, as it happens in this world, one of the first things that young man is approaching in this world, they are drugs. But I was looking for inner peace and joy also in many other things. When I was young, let's say about when I was 17, 18 years old, I joined the club for rowing, for racing boats. And I must admit, it was beautiful. I remember sunsets in my small racing boat, rowing down where the rivers Danube and Sava are merging, right in my city of Belgrade, where I was born. And at those moments I was able to grasp some peace, some serenity, some relaxation from this hunger and from this burning disturbance deep in myself. Also, I was riding my bike out of the city, up the mountains. But whatever I would do, this feeling of peace would very soon go out of me, and I would feel myself the old way again. So I was always searching for something that would stay there for a longer time, something that would really come to myself and stay there, but it was always vanishing. Then when we got a little older, when we were, let's say, when we were 22, 23, we decided to try our luck in sailing boats, in sailing down there by the seashore in Adriatic coast, by the Adriatic Sea. At that time, Yugoslavia was a pretty large country, and the Dalmatian coast was part of Croatia, today independent country. So we would go there, and we were renting a sailing boat. We were very young, and we never sailed, nor we didn't know how to drive a boat. Because first year when we went there and when we decided to rent a boat, it was a motorboat, a yacht, because we still didn't know how to sail, and it was not easy at all. But still, driving a motorboat was also extremely dangerous and complicated for somebody unexperienced like we were. And our siblings and our friends were asking us, worried, are you crazy? What do you think? You never sailed, you never navigated. How do you think? How do you plan to drive your boats through the sea? What if the storm comes up? What are you going to do? But we were sure that we can manage it. We never capitulated. We never moved back from the temptations of this world. We were always, when I say we, I mean friends of mine from Belgrade, close friends of mine, who were mostly from the arts circles of Belgrade, mostly musicians, painters, actors. There was always this quest, this strong will to achieve more, to learn more, to go from the borders, to break through. And that's what we did. I passed the sailing exam, the test, and I received the ID for it. So we could go, because you couldn't rent a boat without this permission. So we sailed, and very soon we learned how to use the winds and the sails of the boat and all those rules of navigation. And very soon we were like masters of the sea, young as we were, 22, 23. And when I think about it today, it was really amazing how crazy brave we were. But this unlimited desire to seek and to find out something more of this world and of this life made us brave and capable of doing many things that most of youth of our age didn't even dream of. And I remember those beautiful days sailing, and we were spending nights out in the sea, tied to some little island without people and houses on there. Many of them were desert islands, small of them, because Adriatic coast consists a lot of small islands, and there, far away from the civilization, we could catch a glimpse of this spirit of peace and little joy. But still, and again, we were realizing this feeling is as soon as we approach the shore and the port, and when we see the people, this feeling would disappear again. And again we would face ourselves with this fact that the peace doesn't stay there. And we continued looking and searching. For myself, of course, I was hippie at that time and listening to rock and roll and hard rock and many of those types of rock and roll music. But of course, I was also a great fan of classical music. Beethoven, Chopin, Mozart, Russian composers, older and more contemporary. And in those quiet moments in my room at my home, I would feel this lofty feeling of being connected with the highly talented spirits of those composers, and they were taking me off on the waves of their beautiful music. And again, in this art of classical music, I would feel that there must be something higher. There must be some source, some center of energy that is giving you this kind of feeling. I knew that those men who were inspired to compose such a beautiful melodies, they couldn't do it by themselves. There was definitely something that they were receiving, this inspiration from somewhere above, but I still couldn't find what it was. And again, when music would be over, I would go out in the city, and again I was still the old one, with this disturbance in myself, with this hunger, with this craving in my young, hungry soul and heart. And again I would go out in the evenings And I would meet my friends and we would get stoned, smoking hash or marijuana, drinking, and the same sadness again would come to my heart, realizing that there is no other way but just to sink into narcotics, and right after that in sex, and that would be it. And I would feel more and more empty after every of those, how could I call them, sex without real meaning, sex without real love, sex without even knowing a person that you are having sex with. Very often I would wake up next morning and I would see a girl beside me, not remembering even her name. And this way of life was slowly killing me. This way of life is taking you closer and closer to the line, to the point where you realize that the life really doesn't have any meaning. And that the best thing would be, as James Dean have said a long time ago, live fast, die young, and be a nice corpse, be a beautiful corpse. So, as the years were passing by, I was more and more convinced that this, how should I live and finish my life? But the other part of my personality was telling me no, no and no. There is another way. There must be something more than this. Besides all of this, I love to travel. And it was always, if it is possible, to be as dangerous as possible. And one of those trips were to Morocco. I had a little, very small car. It was a Polish Fiat, extremely small car. And I have decided with two friends of mine, they were girls. One of them was kind of girlfriend of mine, and another was just a friend. So crazy as we were, we have decided with this small car to start from Belgrade and to drive all over through Yugoslavia, Italian coast, French coast, then through the Spain, all over to the Gibraltar. I remember that year we passed about 10,000 kilometers, and we have decided Morocco because we have heard that there you can get the best hashish and for the very small price. And it was also really extremely mad and crazy to do something like this, to go to Arab country. It was, I think, 1983, with two girls, young like we were 23. And it was an interesting trip, especially when we arrived in Morocco. And very soon we met. There was a small Arab, there was a young Arab hash dealer, a little rascal, a little punk, who approached us when we saw us, because they were really experienced with unexperienced young and stupid Europeans as we were. And it was in Tangier, a town at the coast, at the seaside, and he immediately gave us a piece of hash for free. And we didn't know what's going on, why is he doing this? But we of course received it and went and smoked it off. And it was really good hash. And then this afternoon he saw us and he approached again and he says, okay, now would you like to buy some more? And he said this with a certain imperative, with a certain must, that we now have to do this since we have received from him a piece of hash, so it meant that we want to be their customers. So we said, well, anyway, we plan to get some hash, and so we said, okay, we'll go with you. So he said, okay, follow me. And then we left the center of the city, and slowly we entered the suburbs. And you can imagine in 80s suburbs of some small Arab city. It was really scary, I have to say. Very poor favelas and almost huts, not houses. So he said, okay, here we just arrived in front of one very poor looking house. So we went in. There was no door, just old dirty curtain. And at the end of the hallway, there were two doors, to the left and to the right. in the middle, sitting at a table, there were two blonde girls. I think they were Dutch, dead stoned from hashish. They didn't know for themselves. They were like half conscious. I didn't like that, but I said, okay, well, that's their business. So we went on the right to the room on the right, also without doors, just all dirty curtains. So we sat down on a low couches, and very soon the young little dealer brought nargilas. It's a water pipe, and he filled it with a big amount of hash, so he smoked it, and we got really stoned. But then he didn't stop there. Now he started to fill the pipes with strong marijuana, so he smoked that as well. Then we got even more stoned. And then finally he brought a condom full of hash oil, and he made a joint of it. So he said, no, we cannot smoke anymore. Those two girls of mine, they were already lying there and almost unconscious. He said, no, you have to try, it's a very good stuff. So I smoked for the third time the oil joint, and I was really now fighting to stay normal. And now he said, okay, now it's time for business. So he made a sign to somebody who was staying at the door. So this other guy, who was double taller and bigger and with more muscles than this small one, he brought a big piece of hash. It was like a bowl. It was like a child's head, really big piece, more than a kilo. And he said, okay, now what do you think? You should take this. This is the best hash that you can find in all Morocco. I said, oh man, this is too much. We don't have that much money. He said, what do you think? You don't have much money. You have to take this. And he said, okay, shake hands with this person. And he said, this is my brother. And this guy pressed my hand so strong that I almost screamed. So I said, something is really bad going to happen, because they are not going to let us go without spending money for such a big amount of hash. And I was really getting scared, because I realized it is becoming very dangerous and very scary, because they have no intention to let us go before we buy this big piece of hash. And I said, we don't have that amount of money. He said, no problem. Let them stay here, and you go to your camp. You go to your car and bring the money. If you don't have money, I don't care. Bring some electronic device. Bring your cassette player or whatever you have. So now the play of nerves was on. Welcome to our radio show, The Way, the Truth, the Life. Welcome to our world of supreme love and immortality, where all human hopes are fulfilled. I had a knife in my back pocket, and I was, let's say, strong enough to do something by myself. For example, to jump all of a sudden, to hit him, and maybe to take knife out and to threaten the other guy, somehow try to make my way out. But I didn't know what to do with my two girlfriends, and it was really dangerous and very interesting a game without two of us. He was forcing me and he was bluffing. He was bluffing all the time. And I didn't know whether he is bluffing or not. Because he was telling me, now you're not going to go out of here alive if you don't give us all of your money. But I knew it. I supposed that he is bluffing, that they are really not able to do something like that. They are not that crazy, I was believing, because, we were foreigners, so they could have a great deal of problem with the police. But still, he was not getting off. He was not letting me down. And he was pressing and forcing. But in the beginning I was very scared. But then I tried to gather my power again, my consciousness. And in one moment, I don't know how and I don't know where from, I have remembered when we were young, when I was 12 years old, we had a terrible car crash. Not really car crash, but car accident, that we were tumbling with a car. And I remember that very terrible moment when our car started to swing around on the road, on the asphalt, which was full of oil. And at that very critical moment, I remember only one word that my father uttered, and it was God. And at that moment, we started to tumble with the car. It was like a very terrible sound of hitting of the car on the ground. And I remembered only that word, God. And at that moment in Morocco, I heard an echo of this God, and I started to repeat in my mind. I don't know why, and I don't know where from it came to me, but in my mind I started to repeat, God, God, God. And all of a sudden, the tension that was produced with this young punk just went down, and he started to look at me in a different way. He said, well, you're a good guy, you're a nice guy, I like you. You don't have to buy this big piece of hash. Just take 200 grams. I believe you have enough money for that. And of course, we did have enough money for that. And in a few moments, the whole nightmare was finished. He let us go, we went out, and we passed 1 street, 3rd street, 5th street, and we realized we are saved, we are free, and we are alive. So we went very fast to our camp. We put all our things in the car and we escaped, ran as fast as possible from that city. And then when I was driving, I was thinking and remembering the whole event. And of course, I was not religious at that time. I didn't have any idea what a prayer is. But somehow I started to repeat in my mind, God, 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 and all of a sudden everything was solved. And many, many years later, after that, I remembered this, and I have realized what power was there in that name, in that invoked word, God, that I was invoking in my mind, in my young and scared heart. And this God that I invoked really saved me from that terrible situation. There was another trip, even before that, when we were 21. It was after my first trip to the United States when I was 20. It was 1980. And the very next year, 1981, with two friends of mine, the best friend of mine, Dusan, that I mentioned him, we called him, his nickname was Gera, and the other friend of ours, his name was Zhika. All three of us were really absolutely crazy and wild and just looking for adventure. So we have decided with another car that I have received as a gift from my uncle. It was a Citroën French car which could have open roof. It had a removable roof. And the name of that car was Citroën Diana. But it was an old car and very weak. So we have decided, three of us, three crazy ones, to go to Amsterdam, which was really pretty far away from Belgrade. And I have just received my driving permission. So I was not very experienced in driving at all. And the other guy, Zika, he knew how to drive, but he didn't have a driving license. So anyway, we said, let's go. We had just a little bit of money, and so we were hitchhiking. It was a special way of hitchhiking, but having a car. So what we were doing, we were begging a gasoline. We were begging gasoline. We would stop on the highway, and we were stopping the cars. And whoever would stop, we would say, "Oh, please, we are out of gas. Do you have 2 or 3 liters of gasoline?" And they would always give us a full can of 5 liters. So since our tank was not big, 20 liters, we could fill it very soon, and with 20 liters, this small car could go for more than 200 kilometers. So this way, we crossed over almost whole Europe. It was some kind of a modern hitchhiking. So finally we arrived in Amsterdam, and this time our goal was the LSD trip. We have heard that the LSD trip is something really beautiful, splendid, something really amazing, and we were looking for it all over. But 2 times we have received, how do you say this, a false one, just some kind of pills, maybe aspirin, who knows what. And we finally gave up, and we realized, well, we don't have dealers, it's not that easy. Amsterdam is really something really big and new for us. So we went to a coffee shop where you could buy hash. You could have even a menu with hash and marijuana, mostly hash from all over, Morocco, Turkey, Afghanistan, India. And I was really surprised that you can get it so freely, so easily. And at that trip, I have realized that Holland is something really very, very decadent. That it's a very decadent a place in Europe. 3 really disgusting things, basically. What I found there were, first of it, that you could get drugs everywhere. Absolutely legal, basically. In those coffee shops, you can get any kind of drug, especially hash. The second thing is, all over those canals, you could see so many heroin addicts, those poor junkies, laying all around, stoned and half life, half dead. Most of them very sick. And there was a service. There were people, I don't know, from government, some kind of, nurses or something really crazy. They would go around and they would give them sterile needles and guns and needles and injections. So this way they would prevent them of getting diseased by AIDS or any other infection. And I couldn't believe that this is so obvious, this is so open thing that even government does. So they were giving them free needles to get shot of heroin. So I was really stunned seeing this. I couldn't believe, is this real? And the third thing, which is the most sad, something really terrible that I have seen there, was there were some kind of shops, and in the window shops, and in the window there would sit a young girl in the chair, and they were prostitutes. I never dreamed that you can go all over the city to the street and you can see a window shop, and in the window you could see a young girl, and you just knock on the door, go in, even without knocking. You just go in, you pay, she puts on the curtain, and that's it. It's like you go to the zoo, or you go and buy a piece of meat. it was really terrible to me. It was disgusting. I was thinking about souls. They were so young, and I really have to say, they were really almost virgins. How young and innocent they were, sitting there mostly on drugs, kept there by their pimps, and who knows, only God knows how they got there. So it was terrible. And many years after, I remembered those days in Amsterdam, and especially after the terrible war in 1990s in former Yugoslavia, when this international court for war crimes, it was established in Hague, in Holland. And I was thinking, those Dutch people are now telling us in Serbia that we are savage, that we are not civilized, that we have to be punished. And I remember how terribly decadent and how terribly rotten was Amsterdam at that time during the beginning of 80s. But that's another story. So we finally, in this coffee shop, we met a guy who approached us first because he heard that we were looking for LSD trip. And he said, well, I have LSD trip. But we didn't believe anymore because we were cheated already twice. He said, no, really, this is the real one. And I will give it to you for a really small price. So since we really wanted to try it and we still had some money, we said, well, let it be. So we had bought it, and we swallowed it with a beer. And in about half an hour, it started to work. And for the first time in our lives, we embarked on LSD trip. And it really started to drive us really intense. So we realized this is something extremely serious. And it takes you out of reality. And it takes you to some higher realm that you don't know what it is, but it is really, in the beginning, it gave us really extremely sublime feeling, very lofty feeling like you're in a paradise. And such a deep, I was so deeply convinced that I can jump from the window of the building and just slowly to land down without even hurting myself, or just to walk over the water surface on the canal. But thank God I didn't do that. But it was so intense feeling, and it was driving, and it was taking us so we couldn't even communicate among us. We were just silence, and it was riding us. And finally, after 12 hours, it subsided. And it was our last day in Amsterdam. So we started our way back. And it was good LSD trip, if you can call it this way. And then next year, or even less than a year, I realized, what does it mean, bad trip? We were in Belgrade, and I was studying my dentistry at my home, and there was a telephone ring. There was a friend of mine on the other side, and he said, Aca, because that was a nickname for Alexander. That was my civilian name. He said, come over. We are gathered all at Mira's place. And Mirjana was the daughter of the first president of Yugoslavia after Tito's death, Cvijetin Mijatović. And they used to live in Dedinje. That was a very rich part of Belgrade, where only diplomats and people from government used to live. And it was very rich, and those villas were really all over, and embassies. So this friend of ours, Mira, she used to live in one of the most beautiful and big houses, since she was the daughter of the president of Yugoslavia. And you can imagine, they all gathered there, and they have bought a certain number of LSD trips. And I remember the LSD trip that we have taken in Amsterdam, it was a gelatin pyramid. It was called Pyramid. And this one was called Superman. We had taken it, I went there, but I already realized that some of those friends of mine were really getting crazy there. And especially Mira, she was saying, I'm burning, everything is burning, we are all going to burn. But I thought she's kidding, or I just didn't know, but she really looked strange. And again, I have felt this really intense feeling when the LSD trips takes you over. And so we have decided to go to the city, since this was the suburbs, the rich suburbs of Belgrade, in a place full of forests and beautiful villas. So we went to the city, and after about 1 hour since I have taken this LSD trip, all of a sudden, in the middle of the city, I felt such a strong hit of some enormous, very bad and very dangerous energy. It looked to me that maybe a ton of hot water fell on me, fell on my head and on my shoulders. And from the strength of this hit I almost fell on the ground. And from that moment on, the bad trip started. And to the contrary of that, let's say, good trip in Amsterdam, where I felt like I was in paradise, this time I felt extremely bad, like I was on the bottom of the very hell. It was so terrible. It was like the peak of schizophrenia. It was absolutely terrible. I didn't know what was going on with me, and I thought, I'm definitely going to lose my mind. And fortunately, there was a friend of mine who was also on LSD trip, but he didn't go through this bad trip. He was really, very joyful and very, he was laughing and making jokes, and he was feeling good. So I grasped his arm and I said, Goran, please help me. Do not leave me. Now I'm lost. He said, don't worry, everything is okay. He was just making fun of me. He didn't know what's going on with me. And for about 5 or 6 hours, I was in such a terrible state that I thought that I'm really possessed with thousands of devils who were torturing my soul and my whole personality. And I was deeply convinced that I'm facing the incarnation of evil. Of course, I didn't see, I couldn't touch him, but I realized that I was in possession of the supreme evil of the universe, the very Satan, or call him as you want, Lucifer or whatever. I was held by him, and I think that day was maybe the most terrible day in my life, and I have realized the hell really exists. So thank God and thank to all heavens that I went through this youth of mine, these youth years of mine, unharmed as much as it was possible. Of course, there was a lot of wounds and scars after those years and after those crazy events, but thank God I stayed normal. And finally, we have used to the end all what we could use in our old homeland. And finally, we have decided we are leaving. There is nothing more for us in Belgrade, in Serbia, in Yugoslavia, not even in Europe. America was calling us, especially New York, because 7 years before that, I went there first alone when I was 19, and it was 1979, and then very next year, 1980, with my friend Gera. And it was also a very, 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 very fast 2 months in New York, with running all over nightclubs of New York and really burning our brains with a lot of terrible days and nights. But it was very interesting to us. But my first time when I went to New York, I didn't go that fast, I didn't go that crazy. But my friend Gera, he was, you just couldn't stop him. He was, 100 miles an hour, all over. He wanted to see everything, he wanted to be everywhere, he wanted to try everything. So it was really a suicidal way of living. And that's how he was. And I loved him. He was so charismatic person, he was so clever, he was so talented, he was so nice, he was so sweet, but he was so decadent, he was so crazy. And so since we knew what the New York is, and how it looks like, we definitely wanted to go there and to live there and to stay there for good. And finally we have decided we are leaving for good. He had left before me a month. It was summertime. He had left with his girlfriend, Julia. He graduated in his Academy of Applied Arts. That's how we used to call this kind of school, art school. And Julia was an architect. She finished architecture. And I was still on my university having one more exam before finishing my dentistry. And I was staying there in order to get my diploma, to get a visa for United States, because it was not easy to get visa. So I have accomplished finally everything, and I have received visa for United States in American Embassy in Belgrade. And Ger and Julia, they told me that they are waiting for me and that they have found an apartment in Upper East Side, Manhattan. It was, if I remember well, it was East 83rd Street, between 1st and 2nd Avenue. So finally, I embarked on my Boeing 707, and with his powerful engines, he plucked me out of my homeland, of my home city, from my siblings and from my friends, and we flew over Atlantic Ocean, and I went far, far away from my home. And finally, I flew down in New York City on Kennedy Airport. For the third time in my life, I stepped on American ground. I was so excited. I was so happy. I said, finally, a new life opens in front of me. Now I am matured. I was 27. I have finished my university. The whole life is opening in front of me. And really, some extremely and completely different life was opening in front of me. But at that time, I still didn't know what kind of life is that. Definitely, that was not this New York street life, immigrant life. It was not that. It was something else that I have found in New York, and that I never had a dream, the craziest dream in my life, that I'm going to find something like that. About New York, about our life there, and about that pearl that I have found there, I will talk to you next time. Until then, have peace, have love, have hope, have joy, and have everything good in your lives. Goodbye. Thank you for listening Radio Svetigora, the radio station of the Serbian Orthodox Church, Diocese of Monte Negro and the Seaside. Blessed by His High Eminence, Metropolitan Amphilohie.